What is a thing considered lower middle class that you'd continue doing even if you became wealthy? Hello, everyone. Write your opinion about it in the comments. Story 1. I still want a smaller house. Big mansions do not impress me, even if I could afford the extra costs, utilities plus furnishings, etc. With having a larger home, I don't want one. I don't want to live in a broom closet, of course, but a cozy little house or cottage is good enough for me. Story 2. Eating fast food from the rough part of town. 4 pounds shawarmas, amazing fried chicken, Chinese restaurants where you're the only English guy, little Greek cafes with cheap gyros and souvlaki. It's cheaper than shopping. In fact, my wife and I doing okay. Joint income of just over £100K. We eat out around 5 nights a week. Story 3. My dogs and cats will always come from the pound/shelter/roadside ditch rescue. I will never spend $1,000 on a papered puppy or kitten. Story 4. Here are a few that come to mind. Being anal about not wasting food. I don't buy what I'm not going to eat, and even most scraps end up being used in something. Driving an economical car. I drive a Prius, and I can't stand driving a bigger or fancier car. Besides not wanting to waste gas, it just holds no attraction to me to have a fancy car. Cleaning my own house, preparing my own food. My wife and I do occasionally get someone to help clean, but it just isn't comfortable to either of us to have someone in the house taking care of everything. Plus, we are both very particular about how things are done that we end up doing half the work anyway, if we try to have someone else do it. Buying secondhand clothes. So many clothes now are made from such cheap materials that they feel terrible to wear and fall apart after a few washes. Story 5. I don't know if it counts as lower middle class or just plain middle class, but cars. There is no amount of money where I would ever feel good buying a Range Rover, or a Mercedes, or any brand that is notorious for high maintenance costs. I'm Al about that Subaru Honda life. Story 6. Coordinate my furnishings and keep my house tidy. We lived amongst serious old money on a military officer's patch. Old money has impeccable manners and doesn't give a stuff about their stuff. Everything they owned was antique expensive but broken and or covered in dust. I always wanted to emulate them, but I couldn't get past how I was brought up. Conform, keep a neat home, care about stuff. Story 7. I'd go to a high-class restaurant and order a Miller Lite. Always have, always will. Also, the poorest thing I do without ever realizing it was poor. I add a can of mixed vegetables to my taco meat. It was always prepared that way when I was a kid, and that's how I always prepared it when I was on my own. I always thought that's just how you made tacos. I didn't know it was a way for my grandmother that had 10 kids to turn 1 pound of taco meat into 2 pounds of taco meat for like 39 cents. The look on my girlfriend's face when she came into the kitchen when I was making tacos for us one night was priceless. She was mortified. I'd still do that too. Story 8. 3 things I do. As a retired person who did really well, I wash my cars in my driveway with the old bucket S&D hose. I change the oil in my cars myself, and one's a Porsche. And I get on my knees and pull the weeds out of my lawn. Story 9. Not throwing food away. I mean, I am not talking about forcing myself to eat. My stomach is not a trash bin. I mean trying to buy less food than I think I'm going to need, just trying to not be wasteful. Story 10. Taking public transit helps the environment, and even if I do eventually get a license, I can't imagine driving being a pleasant experience. Plus, my taxes are going to it whether I use it or not, so I might as well use it. Also, my life goal is to live in an RV, which I think is considered lower middle class, but I barely have the finances for it at my income level. And getting a license would be a lot easier if I didn't have to balance working * full-time with taking lessons. I'd probably still work at least part-time even if I can afford not to, but probably not 40 hours a week. Story 11. Taking home a doggy bag. My parents were from the Depression era and stressed the importance of not wasting food. Plus, it's better for the environment to not waste food. Hopefully, it's not packed up into a styrofoam or plastic container. Story 12. Raise and butcher my own livestock. I love knowing that the animals I raise receive the best care and the most humane treatment possible right up to the last minute. I know what goes into my food. I know that it was produced ethically. I know that my family is being taken care of. Story 13. Tipping extraordinarily generously. In fact, I would increase tipping so much. I would leave $10,000 check as tips if I was rich. I would fill up people's GoFundMes. I'd also still shop at the best cheap produce markets. There was one summer where my father abandoned me, and all I had to eat in the house was cookie dough that I would make by mixing old flour, butter, and sugar. I've always had a fondness for cookie dough because of that, and I would probably still eat that. Story 14. Putting American cheese slices on tortilla chips and microwaving it. It horrifies my wife and probably violates some laws in Mexico. More seriously, I continue to struggle being willing to spend money on myself. It's not a great habit, but it does save Momi usually. Story 15. Cooking. I've always loved it, and I wouldn't want to deal with having staff and love creating a fresh, home-cooked meal. You'd better believe I'd have a deluxe kitchen, though. Gardening as well, especially bringing your harvest in to be cooked immediately. Story 16. Eating DiGiorno pizzas. I live in a nice building in NYC, and even my doorman was like, "Why are you eating that crap? I don't care how much money I have. I will continue to eat whatever tastes great. None of this teeny tiny pieces of food called a meal at high-end restaurants, LOA." Story 17. Drive my car until the wheels fall off. Cut my own hair with the trimmers I use. Dress to not stand out, at least aside from special occasions. Fly economy, since flying business and first class is like paying hundreds, even thousands of dollars for an abbreviated stay in a shitty little hotel room. Avoid expensive hotel chains whose list of amenities reads like 24-hour concierge and business center like the plague. And look for cheaper options unless I'm staying somewhere with hot springs, a steam room, and a dry sauna. Outstanding pools with swim-up suites, amazing food, etc. My litmus test is, would I pay real money just for a day pass to hang out here? Do my own shopping, and reward actual bargains with my money because we're all in this together. Cook for myself, especially when it comes to steaks, pad thai, and other things restaurants routinely mess up. Mix it up with an occasional nostalgia hit of instant ramen, mac and cheese, Wolf brand chili, or Chef Boyardee. Story 18. Buying secondhand clothes. I can spend a bit more on clothes than I could when I was much younger, but have gotten pretty good at finding cool and timeless pieces out of durable materials. Story 19. We are pretty well off, but habits from poor days stay with us. All of my Mercedes are at least a year old. I never pay more than $100 Oz for caviar. My butler is handicapped. He is much cheaper than a healthy one. When my driver takes me to my club, he drops me off a block away so I can save on gas. Story 20. Hobo dinners. Cut up potato slices, maybe some bell peppers, jalapenos, cut up brat pieces, or any other meat you want, all into a large piece of foil so you can fold it up after putting oil in it. It's nice because everyone can make their own however they want it. Toss it on the grill, and 30-40 later, you got a gourmet meal. Not sure what other people call them. We refer to it as hobo dinner. Even if I suddenly had $100 million, I would continue grilling hobo dinners. Story 21. Staying under the conspicuous consumption radar. I'd never want to lose my street credibility. I'm getting to be recognized as the lady who detrashes in my town. People don't use that terminology, but it's what they mean. No one needs to know a single additional detail about me. When asked, I say they are welcome, and I do it for the exercise. My mother's cousins were very wealthy. They always drove beater old Hondas. No one wants to make themselves into the most juicy target for theft. It would spoil your day. You might become injured. No matter what my net worth, I'm going to continue detrashing my route as long as I can physically. Story 22. Pasties. A couple of years ago, I landed a job at a firm in what I would call an upper-class area. The Range Rover to Ford ratio is off the charts. On my first day, I asked my team if there was a Greg's nearby. Some of my colleagues looked at me like an absolute heathen and told me that this was not a Greg's area. One even stated that she'd never had a pasty. The very thought of it was clearly an insult to her. I've since been pigeonholed as the office peasant because I love a pasty. Fuck them. I'm a smidge below what I'd call wealthy, but when I get there, you better believe I'll still smash down a cheesy bean and a steak slice on a 2 for £2.50. Story 23. Buying generic brands. I get shit on by all my friends' parents and my wife for buying generic things. This applies to meds, certain foods, gas, clothing, and more. Why pay the extra premium? Especially when many times it's almost exactly the same or even the same in some cases minus the branding. Story 24. Buying clothes on sale and not expensive ones. I remember going into a store once, saw a cute dress, looked at the price, and it was over $300 and just laughed my way out. Spending hundreds of dollars on cloth with a designer name attached to it, it's just wild to me. Story 25. Saving certain things, in case I'll need it later. I'm not a hoarder, but I don't like buying things twice or wasting items that are still in good condition and may serve a purpose. I'd still keep the grocery store bags because I use them for smaller trash cans, reuse a nice gift bow, keep newspaper flyers and lawn twigs for helping start fires in my fireplace in the winter, extra nuts and bolts, extra buttons, etc. Story 26. I want to open with commending all the amazing responses. Totally agree with clearance rack. I do always first look there when I need something like a new coffee maker or a gift for someone, and a smaller house in a better location. My answer has to be fine dining. I have had some good experiences, but I cannot get myself to step inside a pretentious establishment for good food, unless it's for an ultra-special occasion. My own birthday doesn't count. Story 27. I still smoke cigarettes even though people associate them as a poor person hobby, because life is garbage whether you got money or not. I live in my 22-year-old car, I am 30, and I work 50, 60 hours a week at a physically demanding job, Valvoline, with a fractured foot/torn ligament that didn't heal properly from October, making $1 above minimum wage in Washington, which is ridiculously expensive. Sure, I wish things were different, but if I somehow got wealthy, I don't see myself getting a nice house or anything. I just live in a better car that I'm not worried about breaking down at any moment, and of course find women to use me for my money so I can feel any sort of affection. Story 28. I've been around some really wealthy people, and the one thing I could not do is let someone else wash my underwear. Clothes, sheets, towels, whatever is fine. But I'm not sending my underwear out to be washed by someone else. Also, I would want a small house but in the middle of the countryside. And the southerner in me is gonna still need a Bojangles chicken biscuit every once in a while. That and some pizza. Story 29. I have no desire at all to drive an expensive vehicle. Sure, I want something newish and reliable, but anything more than $30-40K new is a waste. It's just transportation. Also, there's something to be said about blending into the crowd and not looking like a target. Story 30. Bought an old van for $4K, fixing it up and converting it into a camper. I could have bought 2 brand new Mercedes Sprinters for the amount I lost in the stock market last couple weeks, but I still get more satisfaction out of doing things myself instead of throwing money at things. Story 31. Fried egg, bologna, and American cheese on pan-toasted bread. Ramen noodles and tuna. Domestic tallboys. All 3 got me through college, lean times, and are baked into my culinary DNA irrespective of my cushy income now. Story 32. I'd keep my average house, but probably fix it up, still go to the grocery store and clip coupons, and probably still work. Just can't fathom a world where I'm not doing something useful. The gift of wealth would be a gift of choice to do things I want to do, not things I have to do. I do everything possible to protect that choice by keeping my life choices reasonable. Story 33. I have a comfort meal that I've been making since I was a teen. It's just pasta with loads of cheese and sriracha sauce mixed in together. Great for a quick, easy meal that's cheap too. And bonus points if you've been drinking the night before and need a cure for lunch. Story 34. Probably going to thrift stores. At this point in my life, I don't shop at thrift stores because I am forced to in order to save money or afford to buy things that I need. I just am tickled by how much money that I save buying things I need and would buy anyway. And that wouldn't go away. I would just have more experience with more expensive things. And I think that I would like going into thrift stores and recognizing them, so I'd probably still go. Story 35. Cook my own meals at home. I've worked a lot of different restaurants, and most are not someplace I would eat after seeing the back of house. With some more expensive ingredients and appliances, there's no reason to restrict myself to a menu or worry about things like food safety or parking, and I can strictly control the quality of my food and its sources. Story 36. Bring my own food to work. I only buy lunch if I am desperate. If I forget a lunch and I'm extremely hungry and have to eat something, I will get something small and cheap just to make it to when I get home where I can make my own food. Wait until an item I want is on sale before I buy it. It has the dual purpose of making me certain that I actually want the item and it's not an impulse buy. I also hem, mend, and tailor my own clothes provided that what needs to be done is reasonable, straightforward, and I don't need to completely deconstruct the garment. Compare prices and deals when I'm shopping to stretch my money as far as possible. Drive a normal car? I will upgrade a trim if the difference is safety features, but not for silly stuff. Story 37. I still religiously shop clearance racks and thrift stores, even though we would be considered upper middle class. It was how I was raised. My parents were upper middle class, but more so than we are because my mom was a Som. We are dual income, and still make less than what my dad made as a single earner. My husband was lower middle class and his family threw money away in name brands and paid retail for a lot of things. How you're raised probably dictates a lot of spending habits. Story 38. Cheap clothes. Let me tell you something, you don't feel near as bad when you make a slip up and tear a $10 pair of Gap jeans from the outlet store as you do a $40 pair from Target. Most the flaws that put them in the outlet are unimportant anyway. Wrong size written on tag. Accidentally sewn on 2 different sizes of belt loops on work jeans. Couldn't care less, still 100% functions for what I need. Story 39. Thrift stores. Right now I can't even afford that because I'm currently unemployed, but in general. Why spend $50 on a pair of jeans at the mall when I can spend $5 on a pair of jeans at the thrift store? Homemade food. If I make it myself, I can season it exactly how I like it. It's cheaper, and I can ensure there's no cross-contamination with things I'm allergic to. Not wearing makeup very often. Makeup is expensive, I hate putting it on, and I feel beautiful without it. I literally only use it if I'm dressing up for Halloween or I'm performing on stage. Reusing those plastic containers that my yogurt and cottage cheese is packaged in. The more of those kinds of containers I save, the less Tupperware I have to buy. And it helps the environment too. Story 40. I always say the only way you'd know I'm a millionaire is in my fridge. Nicer foods, more expensive cuts of meat. When I travel, first class and luxury only, thank you. And when I go to hospital, private, so the way baby. Other than that, I'm actually happy and wouldn't change much.